Okay, Chair, when you're ready, we're now live streaming if you'd like to start the meeting.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual LED monitoring forum on the 27th of January 2021. I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout. May I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the code of conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who's disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this meeting is dependent on internet connection, in the event of a breaking connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details. Please make sure all phones are turned off and are on silent, and make sure all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise level. Keep points short and do not repeat points already made, and do not interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now mute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you're confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with you, Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Dent.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Hartnell.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward.
Present, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor John. Can't see Councillor John so far. Councillor Young. Is not in the meeting. Councillor Pook. Also not in the meeting. Councillor Rowland.
Present, thank you, Debbie.
Okay, Chair. So I can confirm that you're core if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Debbie. Agenda item 1, public speaking. There are no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. If there are any members with any comment on the minutes, please raise your electronic hand. If there are no issues, I'll assume that you are content that they are agreed. I can see no hands, so I will take that as agreement. Agenda item 3 is apologies.
I don't have any apologies, Chair.
Okay, I have received apologies from Councillor Young. Item number 4 is declarations of interest, which again will be done by roll call. Oh.
Okay, so we'll start with you, Chair. Councillor Hawkins, any declarations?
None, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arnott.
None, thank you.
Councillor Dent, please.
Paid up member of LED. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Can I come back?
Yep.
Alan's reminded me I'm also a paid up member of LED, Councillor Arnott. Sorry about that. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Councillor Hartnell, please.
None, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
None, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rowland.
None, thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies, Peter. I've just seen your hand is up. I think it might have even been on a previous item. Maybe the apologies.
Only on apologies. It's not. It's the most appropriate place I can think of just raising this, to introduce Jamie Bryant, who's attending on behalf of LED. He's our newly appointed Director of Delivery. So along with Bridget, is my second director, and we'll be attending these meetings in future.
Thank you. On to item number 5, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency to discuss. On to item 6, confidential and exempt items. There are 3 items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way, listed under items 11, 12 and 13. Unless anyone raises their electronic hand to contest this, I will assume that all members are agreed to those items being held in private. I can't see any hands at this time, so I'll take that. Thank you. Agenda item 7, the LED monitoring forum to agree work priorities for the forum. Charlie, I think you're to set the scene on this item, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. This is for the forum to agree the areas that were discussed at the last meeting, the areas that should be kept under review by the LED Monitoring Forum, and where appropriate for the forum to allocate resources, reports, etc., to help progress these items. I think it was also clearly stated at the last meeting in December that some of these will appear as standing items, of which I think a couple of them are already on today's agenda, and that it would be kept under review. Just clear that off there. That the list will be kept under review, updated and amended, and when a specific task or action will be completed, they will be deleted. So it's really for the forum members just to agree that that's an accurate list of priorities and tasks and work scope that was discussed at the December meeting, and obviously to add any further ones since the last meeting in December. So that's it, Chair, for any discussion if required.
Thank you, Charlie. No, I think that does a useful summary of what was discussed last time. First, open up to those outside the forum, please. Which I can see no hands, so I'll go inside and to Councillor Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Although I wasn't present at the December meeting, I had to give my apologies. Having read that list of, it seems eminently sensible, so I'd actually like to formally move that we accept those.
Great, thank you. Anybody willing to second, please? Councillor Dent.
I'm happy to second those.
Perfect.
It's just that I feel that as we discuss them, as we go through the list, we might, since the meeting in December, the situation has changed quite radically. We might need to reprioritise some of them. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's any intention for that to be a priority list in itself outside of they're just numbered because that's the list they're in that schedule, and I think I'd be happy with that viewpoint. Don't know if anyone else objects to that. Obviously, we've got some fires that are bigger than others at the moment, and I think that will change as time moves on. On that basis then, Debbie, are you coordinating a vote on this?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I was doing some technical stuff in the background. So you've got a proposer and a seconder, with Jack Rowland proposing, Alan Dent seconding, that the list set out on page 10 of your agenda, items 1 to 9, are the priorities, not necessarily in priority order, but they are the priority areas. So I'll pass over to Amanda just to run the vote if members are happy that that's what they're voting on. Thank you.
Okay, members, if you could raise your electronic hand, please, if you are for the motion. Okay, Chair, that's 1, 2, 3. That's 6 for the motion. And have I got any hands for and abstentions? None. Okay, Chair, the motion is carried.
Great, thank you. On to the next item, item 8, which is a verbal update from Simon Davey on the appointment of external consultants.
Thank you, Chair. Very brief. Through Sports England and their contractor list framework agreement, they've engaged Strategic Leisure on our behalf to carry out the analysis and auditing, if you like, of the current claims coming through from LED in terms of our approval for the current year to meet emergency funding. It's a lady called Rachel Fowler. She started work and would have met with LED, and she will be preparing reports that I can then bring to this forum for your overview. And she's working through details as we speak. So I haven't got anything back from her as yet. The good news is the cost of the appointment, which is £3,600, is being met totally by Sports England as their contribution to help with local authorities in this situation. So that's good. Charlie will probably come on later in terms of the strategy and how Sports England might help there. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. I'll start with outside the committee, please. It looks like you're getting away with it. Inside the committee? We've got nothing. I'll one quick question for myself, please, just to clarify. Well, obviously, it's we're asking them to, I think the phrase audit the claims being put forward. Is that just purely checking accuracy, or would they be going as far as to say there's been appropriate expenditure on some items?
Bridget looks like she wants to speak and
Bridget,
can
yes.
add to what I'm saying, but certainly the remit that I agreed was a total look in terms of what's been appropriate, measures taken. So it's not just do these add up, it's do these make sense, but I'll hand it over to Bridget.
Yeah, just a quick update from me. I spent an hour this morning with both Rachel Fowler and Liz Taylor from Strategic Leisure, and went through queries and questions and understanding of our delivery for East Devon. So we had a long session this morning, and she's hoping to get the report through to you shortly. So they've been very engaged with us, and it's been a very positive experience. So very brief update from me.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Rowland, I've got with a hand up.
Thanks, Chair. It's good news that Sport England are actually financing the 3,600. I assume that's just through to the end of this financial year?
Correct, yes. We've just engaged them up to the end of March to cover the period that council have agreed the additional funding. We may have to consider what goes beyond March.
Thank you, everyone. I can't see any more hands, so as I think we're only noting that update, we'll move on to item number 9, which is the developing of a leisure strategy and the next steps. Charlie, please.
Thank you very much again, Chair, and I'm sure Peter will probably want to make a few contributions to this as well. If I just sort of kick off, I'm acutely aware this is very much a pressing item for the forum, and progress is wanted pretty urgently on it. So what I want to try and establish from today's meeting is the type of leisure strategy that we are looking at preparing. I sent out to forum members 2 examples, a leisure facility strategy and a straight leisure strategy, and hopefully if you had, forum members had a chance just to even skim read through both of those, you can see that they are fundamentally different strategies. So I think it's important that we are clear as a collective group the type of strategy we're looking to prepare. So if we can nail that down, that would really help with the commissioning of external consultants, which, as Simon says, I'll be looking to go through the Sport England process again, because obviously that's been a really helpful mechanism to appoint Strategic Leisure for the auditing, and I think that's a good process for us to go through to appoint external help, and hopefully some funding as well that will come attached with that if we go through that framework. So again, just to get a steer from the forum on that process. So I just really wanted to open it up for discussion to give me a sense of what kind of strategy the forum's looking at, because obviously I'll be key in helping to act as, I think I said, the conduit between the forum, LED, whoever's appointed to develop the strategy, and obviously then the reporting through to various committees, overview I think was discussed, and obviously to cabinet. So I think we all recognise it's a pretty hefty piece of work that's required. So if we can just sort of use a bit of discussion time to how we want to progress it and what kind of strategy, that would really help me. Thanks very much, Chair.
No, thank you, Charlie. I just wanted to touch on one point I think we discussed at our last meeting about which committee this also sits with or is sort of sponsored by. want of a better phrase, obviously we've got one very set of roles, and I can certainly see us feeding into it, but I don't know if we are necessarily the right people to be developing that strategy, but happy to take a suggestion that there is a better place or a best place for it. Happy to open up to members outside the forum, please. Or inside. Happy to open up to anybody. I'll go with Peter first, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A couple of points, really. I think I take your point that the broader leisure strategy possibly is something for the council as a whole or cabinet to consider. I would welcome a broader leisure strategy which took into account far more than just the facilities that we manage. So that was looking at, say, health and wellbeing in the district, the use of the countryside, the seafront, the side shore centre. You know, all of these issues, outreach work that we do in the community. All of these are broader leisure issues that I think, you know, the sports clubs as well. I think these are things which should be in a broader leisure strategy. But whether that council wishes to pick up that broader leisure strategy or not now, from the point of view of this group, the two issues from my perspective which are relevant to LED and our facilities would be the immediate reflection on the facilities that we manage and a strategic view and a strategy for the facilities that we manage. And that also must include a review of the pitches strategy, which was last done in 2015. I reread it last week, and it does recommend that pitch strategy is updated every 3 to 4 years. I mean, I've got a list of 6 sites where we have an interest or a direct responsibility in artificial turf pitches. And new ones have come along since the last leisure, the pitch strategy was written. All have been upgraded. So we're looking at King's School in Ottery, Axminster, Broadcliffe are now looking for one. Honiton School are looking for one. Exmouth Community College want to upgrade theirs. You know, so there's a lot of pitches that we're responsible for or directly associated with, which need to be reviewed. So perhaps in terms of this group, I would ask that the more immediate focus is perhaps as a starter point is a review of the facility strategy and the pitch strategy so that we can move forward in partnership on this. And also having that in place will allow us, will be better for us to get funding from the National Lottery, national governing bodies and so on, because you need the support of a strategy to justify the reason for those bids. And if they're not in a strategy, it's less likely to get funded. So perhaps, Chair, I might suggest a sort of 2-phased approach, and that this group consider a review of the facility strategy and the pitch strategy in the first instance, and that the bigger picture is escalated perhaps to full council as to whether they wish to see a broader leisure strategy incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, did you want to respond to those points?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. Just very quickly on the plain pitch strategy. Yeah, I understand. Well, first of all, that's led by our planning policy colleagues. I think Matt Dickens is the lead officer with that. And I'm pretty sure it's in their programme for review this year. And I was going to suggest through you, Chair, that it may be worth inviting Matt or someone from planning policy or Ed Freeman to report to the forum on the timetable for reviewing that, because that will help to answer Peter's questions about you know, when it's actually taking place, and obviously inform the wider forum of what the process is. So that was just a potential recommendation to come from this this item.
Thank you. Councillor Dent, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I absolutely echo the priorities that Peter was just talking about, and that it seems to me that immediate priority is to discover exactly where we're at with LED, how they're operating, how their finances are working, what the forecasts are going to be, what the demands are likely to be on the council's finances in terms of maintenance and so on, because there's zero income for LED while they're, and as far as I can see, there's not much going to happen. You just asked about golf just now. I can't see much happening for the next 3-4 months. So we can well be into next year, or there's uptake of people taking classes again, swimming again, and so on. And that means we've got costs running amok inevitably. And that would be, to me, the first priority, and then work out what the strategy would be to overcome the issues and set some sort of timetable of where we're going. Once we've done that, then we can look more widely at the LED strategy within the leisure, sport and physical activity strategy, which I suggest would be the Strategic Planning Committee, because that's strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. It was really a question at the moment. I was just interested to know whether through Sports England, the sports facility calculator has been used, which actually helps identify the demand and financial contributions that might be available. Because unlike, I did have a look at the Crawley report that was shown, and I must admit I haven't read all 179 pages. But obviously one of the differences is Crawley is a borough council in a defined area, whereas we've got a similar population spread across a much bigger geographical area. But one of the things I did pick up out of that was that sports facility calculator. I just didn't know if we'd historically, whether we've used that or not.
Perhaps I could answer that, Chair.
Yes, please.
Yes, we have, and this goes back to my point really. So where we've been successful in getting significant lottery funding, firstly Exmouth Leisure Centre, we've done the same with Fear Park for tennis, and we did the same a couple of years ago for the artificial turf pitch at King's School Lottery. You do need to use that calculator to justify demand. And so that looks at the population, it looks at the facilities that are available to that population, and then it determines whether or not such a thing, such a refurbishment or a new facility is justifiable. And fortunately, both of those examples, the examples that I've given, all fell within a facilities calculator that made them viable, and we got the lottery funding or the national governing body funding for each of those facilities. So if I give you an example of why we need a new strategy, and it's just one example, I'm not particularly favouring this town, but Axminster is a growing town, and the leisure facilities in Axminster are totally inadequate now, really. We're trying to share a school gym, a very small one, and a school sports hall with a growing town. It's not adequate, and we need to find new facilities in Axminster. And in order to get lottery funding, and there's a current lottery fund available now, a facilities investment fund, which we could apply for now to get funding for new facilities in Axminster, potentially at Cloakham Lawns or another site that we might identify. But it would be a much stronger case if the leisure strategy existed to identify that Axminster was a growing town, that the population for the next 5 to 10 years was going to be greater than could be satisfied by the leisure centre. So there's another example of, again, how that facilities calculator would help, but that the strategy needs to support that. We need a facility strategy in place to identify those areas of shortcoming where we can improve our facilities to meet growing demand. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott, please.
Thank you, Chair, very much. Yes, I think the, I mean, if we remember a few minutes ago, we agreed at item 7, I think it was, what our work priorities were. And it's absolutely right, everybody is right about this. Of course, it's about LED now and the financial support, and then the agreement moving forwards, and ensuring that we and LED are seeking third-party funding, and then we look at the buildings and we're mapping the future relationship and so on and so forth. I think 2 things. I think A, this committee is extremely well configured to carry forward the wider review. I don't don't see a purpose of kicking it anywhere else because the skills are here. I don't think it really goes to strategic planning. I think if what Charlie is suggesting is that strategic leisure may be the people to help us carry out an overall review, I think we should just start that. It's a terrible mistake, isn't it? If you, I mean, look at your own personal circumstances. Sometimes if you're worried about money, you do nothing for 6 months because you're worried about paying the next mortgage. And then you've lost all opportunity for strategic thinking about how to get yourself into a different place. So from my point of view, as an individual member of this committee, Chair, I think we do need to pursue it. And I think we should enable Charlie to make the next contact with Strategic Leisure and see what they come forward with. I think Councillor Rowland's point is also very good. We're not Crawley, we're not a dense borough council, we're something different. But we almost need to identify what that something different is, because as Peter's just said, there are such different challenges in different communities. And I think if we understand all those in one document with outside help, I think that can only be helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, agree with everything that's been said. Would just like to add, really, I think we need a strategic vision, perhaps, as well. That needs to be stated that we're doing something for all residents, and our strategy should be aimed at all residents. There needs to be a social element in the strategy, because we're trying to use leisure and the facilities that we have with LED to try and deal with some of the issues caused by the pandemic and the requirement of well-being and wellness that has taken such a battering over recent months. And also we are very fortunate in this district to have a very large number of open spaces. I think we also do need to consider those open spaces as sources of leisure as well. So I think we need to have a strategic statement at the beginning and a strategic view, and then hunker down to the detail, the tactical detail of how we actually provide our leisure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hartnell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a question really, is kind of just understanding how the development of a leisure strategy may well dovetail with the new local plan, and just understanding how there may be some sort of cost savings, I suppose, in the development of the local plan, and how it might cross over with some of the items within the leisure strategy. So there's possibly an idea there where we can have some joined up thinking, and the two things could go together. So I've not made that terribly clear, but I'm sure you get the gist of what I'm suggesting. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think there's an economies of scale suggestion in there, isn't there? If we're looking to ask everybody an opinion on one thing, there's something else we can ask at the same time.
Yeah, well, we've got these two things going on potentially at the same times, and there's going to be a crossover in some of the areas that we're looking at. So there would make some sense to try and get some economies of scale.
Charlie, I don't know if you know the answer to that at the moment, but I'll ping it your way.
Chair, if it helps, I could try.
I was going to give Mark, actually.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see you
were
on the call.
I mean, I think increasingly these days, indeed, it's probably been the case for the last decade, arguably. Councils making their own direct provision from their own resources of leisure facilities has become less and less, more remote, if you like. So a lot of it has been about trying to keep the existing estate going, and that includes sports pitches and things. So as a consequence of that, the local plan and the whether it's a playing field strategy or a sports strategy becomes that much more important, because it's through development and it's through either SIL or through Section 106 contributions that you look to try and build up enough resource to then match with for example, a bid to the National Lottery or a bid to Sport England or to another, to try and make sure that a community has, proper provision in terms of sport and leisure.
Thank you. Charlie, I think, do you know what sort of time scale it would take to get this policy from commencement to implementation?
Peter might be able to sort of just on that. What I was going to say is that I picked up from what Simon was saying, that when we went through Sport England to appoint Strategic Leisure, we were able to draw on some very useful funding, obviously, to help support the process of the auditing. And is that a mechanism that, again, we should, I'm assuming you'll say yes, because if obviously we can draw funds from Sport England to help develop the leisure strategy, that seems like too good an opportunity to miss. I don't think it will delay it unnecessarily. I think Simon and I had a quick conversation. It's just getting in touch with Sport England and sort of seeing if they'd like to assist us, because they'll see this of strategic importance. But in terms of developing the strategy, no, because I'm as yet in my portfolio of extensive responsibilities, haven't produced a leisure strategy in my lifetime. So maybe Peter can sort of help answer that one.
Thank you. Simon, did you want to come back on the Sport England point about funding?
Yeah, if I could. I mean, there is the funding issue that Charlie raises. Also, importantly for me, from a procurement point of view, what Strategic Leisure have been are on a framework agreement with Sports England, and that's how they were appointed quickly. So by going through Sports England, there is a framework agreement with contractors already on there who we can select from. So I think that's, as well as funding, that's the important thing as well, or else we'd have to go out to some sort of tendering exercise, because I'm not sure how much a strategy might cost. I think we need to define it a bit tighter in terms of what we want, but I think we've got a flavour. But it would be useful to get to go through definitely Sport England to arrange that, get an idea of price, and also funding, and use their framework agreement would be a really good approach if this group could agree that.
Thank you. Peter, did you want to add a comment about time scale, if you've got experience in that?
Can I ask, make a couple of comments actually? Yeah, time scale, I think I was going to say what Simon's just said, that I'm very keen to see this strategy as soon as possible. But you can see from the volume of work that the two examples have been given, is it's not going to be a cheap report, and you probably, I would agree by using the Sport England framework, but you're probably going to be outside of your procurement thresholds, and you're going to need to use those consultants on their list to do a procurement process, because it's going to be quite an expensive report. Timescale, I think you're looking at least a year, depending on a year from when the appointment is made, at least. So, I don't think we're going to be seeing anything until well into 2022, to be honest, depending on the remit of and the breadth of the strategy that you're looking at. Perhaps if you take that approach that I mentioned, that they address the facilities and pitches first, and then move on to the broader countryside, open spaces, play, seafront, etc., health and well-being strategies. We could at least have a draft facilities and pitches report in front of us, whilst the rest of it is being developed. I want to chuck another comment in, if I may. I've been wondering where to bring this into the meeting, and perhaps now is the right time. I fully appreciate and absolutely totally agree that LED needs to be monitored at the moment whilst we get through this COVID crisis. But we are looking, I believe, at a 5-10 year strategy and a partnership arrangement. And I would just ask if it might be possible to think ahead a little bit and to rename this group the Partnership Forum rather than a monitoring forum, which I think is a little bit, I feel like a naughty schoolboy sometimes coming to this meeting and I'm being called into the headmaster's office. I would rather we had a partnership approach, and we look at these strategies and how to develop these facilities and activities, health and well-being together in a partnership approach. So just a request at this moment.
Thank you, Peter. Oddly enough, I've also had the exact same note written down, so I feel like my notes are being copied about changing the name at some point. Councillor Arnott, please.
We could go for monitoring and partnership, couldn't we, Chair, and then delete the monitoring when the monitoring's over, perhaps. Yeah, I think I better say this politely. I think it's important that members are the ones who make suggestions about changing names of committees. They're just a little thing. They're just a just a comment. Yeah, just a factual thing, which may be helpful, Chair. I understand that strategic planning next month has the playing pitch strategies coming to it. So again, perhaps that goes to the argument that we do need to sort of try and focus this all back in one place rather than bouncing around. But obviously, that's come from historic background. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. I can see a finger. I'll take that as a hand.
Thank you, Chair. What I was going to say is Peter's idea, and he's mentioned of the strategic review of facilities being part of the key element, or one of the key elements of a review, is, from my financial point of view, is definitely really important in terms of that really does. If you just focus the LED on the LED contract and our costs, it's all based on those facilities, which are quite aging facilities. So to be able to work out what that looks like for the future, it is about facilities, I think, and just conversations I've had with people in other authorities. There is definitely a different way of approaching it rather than the way we've set up our 7 centres, 2 swimming pools, and the costs involved in that are quite heavy compared to alternative ways of providing leisure. And I just want to sort of capture that in terms of some review.
Thank you. I guess what we need to really tease out today then is, does this forum want to own the development of this letter strategy going forward? Does it sit better under somewhere else? And even, I think there's been strong suggestions that there's elements of it that need to come forward a lot sooner than other aspects. And obviously we're aware that there are different aspects that are already potentially sat under other committees anyway. So I was wondering if anyone's got any thoughts in that area.
Oh, Chair, do you want me to say something?
I'm happy for some. If I stay quiet long enough, I might get away with it.
Well, I've already said it. I think this is a really well-constructed body of people, which may well be called the panel or whatever, or the partnership in due course. I'd recommend it sits here really because it's got the exclusive focus on leisure. I hope it's helpful. Just in the last 24 hours, we're going to have a cabinet member now, what we do, Councillor Hookway, who's sitting there, whose portfolio holder title is Leisure, Sports and Tourism. We've also got a member champion, Vicky Johns, who can't be here today. So just if I were you, I'd keep it in here. I think Charlie can have a good interaction, as can Simon, as can Mark, with us here who've got particular interest in this. And I think, well, it's up to you, Chair, but it may be that there are some things that are in other bits and other committees you may want to bring in here. But to me, I would happily make a recommendation that we go ahead with Charlie seeking to get strategic leisure or whoever's appropriate on board to do this next stage of analysis. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we go next for me, and that we try and maintain as much of it in this committee as possible. And that's not a proper recommendation, but you know what I mean.
That's fine, but I'll happily take it as a proposal of some shape. That I think the wording in essence is that the LED monitoring forum will work to develop a leisure strategy. We've agreed the use of through the Sport England framework to utilise. Are we going as far as saying that we do want to use leisure strategy limited, or is it just one of the options? So I was unclear on that point.
If I can, Chair, can we just
yes,
go to Sports England and let them help us appoint from that point?
Yeah, that sounds sensible. I'm getting hands galore now, so I'm going to keep quiet and go to Peter, then Jeff, please.
Just another comment, sorry to muddy the waters, but we also have the pavilion and you have Manor Theatre, and I don't know where the pavilion under this forum sits. It is part of this forum because it's part of our portfolio, but it wouldn't come under a leisure strategy, it would come under a cultural strategy. So just let's not forget the pavilion and probably including that along with a cultural strategy with Manor Theatre, but that is probably a red herring. I don't want to throw it in and muddy the waters, but I think let's not forget the pavilion.
Thank you. Councillor Perk, I think I saw a hand up earlier.
Yes, you did. And
Excellent.
first of all, may I give my apologies for turning out late. I've been running a bit late today. Anyway, just listening to this, going through the debate seems to be on the strategy relating, and it comes down to the physical buildings, the services and things. What I haven't seen is the looking at from a council financial point of view, and it's something I have mentioned before. You know, surely we don't seem to have the budget set. You know, we got, as a council, we got certain statutory duties to perform, and we've got other, and then the council plan issues. And we've forever had, ever since I've been a councillor, having arguments about things like the Thelma Hulbert Gallery, where does that sit? And then, you know, can you put it into health and well-being things? Should we as a council sort of say, look, this is an important issue to us, and therefore, you know, alongside our statutory duties, we should have a budget for health and wealth for leisure, because then that'll also give a steer to the actual the strategy, because, you know, the strategy could sort of go through the roof, or it could be within, you know, it could be a strategy which is achievable within a budget. I'm not really saying this very well, I'm sort of thinking as I'm speaking, but I'd like to, you know, are we in a position to actually say, well, of our operational budget, we as a council feel we can best serve our councillors, our residents, by having a budget, and then making sure we utilise that budget, as opposed to you know, just paying for things as they come along. Because LEDs, you know, the money for that LED's always been a bit sort of obscured by there's the grant, and then there's the cost of all the buildings and things. We've never really 100% known the cost of things. And I know I always get pinned for looking at the budget side of it, but I just think make it plain. It'd be easier for the consultants to understand where we're coming from, and easier for us as a council to say, look, we're going to commit this, and then it's up to that's the budget that can be used to achieve as much as, well, hopefully 100% of what we set out to achieve. Perhaps Simon could come and say something on that.
Before Simon does, Chair, can I just check with Councillor Pook if he has any interest to declare, since he's joined us late? You'll need to unmute yourself, Councillor.
Caught me again. No interest to declare, apart from the fact I walk around East Devon.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Chair, I'll let you continue.
So through the chair, if that's okay, just addressing Councillor Pook's point, I think it's a bit of chicken and egg situation. I'm not sure. I mean, from a financial point of view, trying to balance the budgets for future years where we've got significant deficits to find, I'd be saying at the moment we pay a subsidy to LED of nearly 900,000, and on top of that is a good 400,000 revenue costs in terms of our assets. I would, you know, to help me or help the authority balance the books, I'd reduce that by half, or down to 25% going forward. But I don't think that's a position that members would want in terms of provision of services. So I think it's a very difficult question. I think you need to understand what a strategy might look like, what services might look like, where savings could be obtained by running things differently in terms of asset provisions. And I think it's going to be that balancing act at the end in terms of, you know, what we can afford to what we want to provide. I think to set a budget now for it would be very difficult, because I think we'd all have a different view what that budget should be.
Thank you. Councillor Ledger, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just really want to ask a question of the the panel is, are they looking for the leisure strategy to be like a playing pitch strategy, in which you need to have one that's in date through planning policy, so that you can apply for certain grants and get certain awards from larger organisations? Or is it just a strategy for leisure in East Devon that we as East Devon District Council are going to hold ourselves to for what we see future provisions are for leisure in the district? And it would be the same for culture as well. And it would be good to get that kind of differentiation between the two on, is this going to be a planning policy that you're actually looking to gain these grants from, or are we just doing it for ourselves?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Obviously, Peter's already mentioned that there is funding available that does rely on having these appropriate policies in place. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's just picking up on the point that Councillor Pook was making, and just following on from what Simon Davey just said as well. He's absolutely right saying that it's a chicken and egg situation, because if we're going to engage consultants through Sports England, until we see what comes out of that, I don't see how we can then consider what budget might be attached to any recommendations that we might want to take forward. So the way I've been looking at it, until we get that consultants report, it's very difficult to say what the financial implications are.
Councillor Pook.
Yeah, so just coming back on that quickly, I wasn't expecting to set a budget at this meeting or anything, but at the moment we're spending 900 plus 400, 1.5 million a year. Are we, you know, I think we need to give the consultants a lead to sort of say, look, this is the sort of area we're comfortable with and we can achieve, or we have achieved historically. Otherwise, we're in danger of consultants coming up, you know, designing the golden solution, which is going to be unachievable, and we're going to end up, you know, first of all, wasting money on that solution, and secondly, you know, trimming that down. We're trimming something down as opposed to, you know, building something to fit to start off with. And I just think it's better to build to fit to start off with, rather than sort of start trimming down. And yeah, not constraining them to the exact pounds and things, but at least giving them a good lead.
Thank you. Peter, please.
Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Ledger's point, it is of course both. You need a strategic vision as well as a support, which is also then a supporting policy which supports grants and applications. And just to say as well, let's not forget, when you're looking at that strategic vision, we are looking ahead 5-10 years, and there's also the added complication of bringing Cranbrook into your strategy and the costs that might be associated with that. And that's, I know it's another can of worms, but it's got to be part of this long-term strategic vision.
Thank you. I was going to say Councillor Arnott, but he's just got up, so I'll skip to. Oh, he's back. Councillor Arnott, if you're there, if you're good to go.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was shutting the door. Yeah, God, you've thrown me now. Yes, I was just trying to follow up on Councillor Ledger's point from earlier. I'm just trying to understand fully, as we go ahead with this, does this, where does the money, this is a question for Simon really, would we be taking money out of Charlie's pot, so to speak, Charlie Plowman's pot, you know, leisure, or because there are, you know, planning elements to this and pitches and that strategic planning, we taking it from somewhere else? Do you see what I mean? Because one pot's probably got rather more in it than the other, I suspect.
Simon, do you have any thoughts on that?
If we're talking about sort of the cost of providing the strategy, or various strategies perhaps, I think we'll have to get an idea of the cost involved. Originally, when we started talking about this, in terms of when I thought we were going to have to pay for the auditing, I had assumed, and I think I advised Cabinet at the time, that we could take it from the allocation that we've given this year in terms of extra funding, in terms of the 1.4 million, a cost of 5-10k in terms of a strategy provision would be immaterial to that overall budget, and would be within what the council wanted in terms of dealing with this year's financial issue for LED. I don't know how much an overall strategy might cost. If it's in the order of 40,000, something like that, I think we would may have to come back to Cabinet Council with ideas of how that could be funded. I'd need to consider it further, I think, Leader.
Thank you, Simon. So I think we kind of got to a point, haven't we, where we're happy to agree to move forward with a leisure strategy within this forum, to use Sport England to assist us in that. I feel like it's too early in a stage to narrow it down too much further than that. We need to start the ball rolling and then see what happens. On that basis, if I'll happily recommend that if somebody wants to second. Councillor Rowland, perfect. And then I'll hand over to Amanda to do a vote.
Thank you, Chair. If councillors could raise their virtual hands, please, if they are for the motion.
Chair, can I be terribly rude? Just ask for actual clarification of what it is we're voting for. Can you say it again, please?
Chair, are you happy for me to clarify that?
Yes, please. You can probably word it better than me.
Not at all. So, members, my understanding is that what you want to do is keep the work of developing the strategy within the forum as it stands, and you also want to use the mechanism of Sport England in order to contract your consultants to do the work on the strategy. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so if members are happy, Amanda, if you can start the vote again, please. Thank you.
I don't seem to have a yellow hand. I've only got a yellow thumbs up, so I trust that will do.
Hang on, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So if with Councillor Pook's thumbs up, that's a unanimous vote for the motion.
We need to get you one of those foam hands, Councillor Pook, that Kenny Everett used to have, the big sort of one. You can just hold that on a stick or something.
I feel deprived. Why haven't I got a yellow hand?
Councillor Pook, you might find it under the More option, and then it's called Raise Hand.
Oh, raise hand as opposed to the little sign.
There we
Sorry,
go,
I wasn't
lovely.
reading.
Great. Sorry, Chair, do continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 10 is exclusion of press and public. Under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public, including the press, be excluded from the meeting as exempt information of the description set out in the agenda is likely to be disclosed, and on the balance of public interest in discussing this item in private session, part B. Members, we will take a short break while the live stream is stopped.